Chapter 407, Deep Valley Dungeon. This chapter is updated by Novels.pl. Temple of Holy Fire? Zhang Yuochen displayed a look of doubt. Master Longs muttered coldly. Do you want to keep hiding? In the Five Elements continent, apart from the Temple of Holy Fire, can other powers train a man to possess such a strong supernatural power of fire? How ridiculous. Even if you are from the Temple of Holy Fire, you won't defeat me. Master Longs had his own plan in mind. Although he couldn't afford to offend the Temple of Holy Fire, the temple couldn't tyrannize in the Five Elements continent. After killing this genius of the temple, he would at worst join its hostile forces. Most importantly, since he was the genius of the temple, he had a lot of great treasures. If he got the treasures from him, maybe his cultivation would reach a higher level and break the limits of mortals. Master Longs was very excited. He decided he would fight for it no matter what. Woo! Under his control, the Ice Crystal's dragon whistled loudly and swooped down. It swiped at Zhang Yuochen with its claws. With sharp eyes, Zhang Yuochen stood straight and put his right hand behind his back. He extended his left arm and hit the dragon claw with one finger. Sun Meridian Ripple. The tip of his thumb glowed scarlet. A bowl-sized sword path flew out and collided with the dragon claw. Pow! The sword breath smashed the dragon claws, turning them to wisps of ice crystals. Master Longs' supernatural power was strong. Under his control, the ice crystal's dragon's claws soon reunited and attacked Zhang Yuochen again. This guy's cultivation is really powerful. Only a polar icy dragon can defeat him. Master Longs pressed on the top of his skull with a coldness in his eyes. The hollow of his palm emitted a black light. In an instant, 36 large icing cold swords were condensed and arranged into a sword array. It flew at Zhang Yuochen. Whoosh! Zhang Yuochen's pressure doubled under the attack. The indigents in the Five Elements primitive world practice supernatural power, so they are very adept at battling from a distance. I have to get closer to him in order to regain the upper hand. 12-fold force of Elephant Palm. Zhang Yuochen displayed the fifth palm of the Dragon and Elephant Prajna Palm. He quickly threw his arms and shot out 12 handprints one after the other. 12 handprints overlapped and turned into a huge fingerprint, releasing 12 times the power. Pow! With just one palm, the polar icy dragon was smashed into ice crystals. This kind of palm technique was more advanced than the mid-class of spiritual stage. It was a superior class spiritual stage technique that could be used when one reached the sixth palm. Its power was also better naturally. The fifth palm could only unleash 9 times the attack force. Now it could release 12 times the force. Zhang Yuochen raced out from the 36 ice-cold swords. Arching his body and extending his legs like an arrow, he flew up 100 meters to reach Longs at the top of the cliff. Master Longs did not think that the young man's physical strength was so strong that he couldn't fight him at close quarters. He quickly retreated into the deep valley. He waved his crystal wand to merge the 36 large icing cold swords into a huge 10-meter sword. He slashed at Zhang Yuochen and tried to prevent him from moving forward. The huge sword had not yet fallen, yet a strong sword breath had already torn apart the ground under Zhang Yuochen's feet, moving the plates on his right and left. Zhang Yuochen did not dare to underestimate the power of the sword. Out of sheath, the Violet Thunder Sword flew out of its sheath and fell into Zhang Yuochen's hands. He immediately injected genuine qi into the blade to activate the 72 inscriptions of electricity. With a bang, several thunderbolts flew out of the blade and condensed into an illusory image of a thunder vulture. There was a bang. Zhang Yuochen shattered the huge icing cold sword and rushed out again with the soul-breaking wind whisper, one of the 13 sword techniques of soul chasing. It pierced the sky and made a harsh sound that was enough to shatter the soul. The sword technique had reached the level of martial arts perfection. It was comparable to the inferior class of ghost level in terms of power. Master Longs' face sank. He immediately lifted the crystal wand to block the attack. A 9-layer defensive light curtain appeared. Break! Zhang Yuochen growled. The Violet Thunder Sword broke Master Longs' defensive light curtain easily. It was like breaking 9 pieces of paper. Bang! The crystal wand collided with the Violet Thunder Sword. The strong explosive power passed through the combat sword, forcing Master Longs back awkwardly. He kicked into the air, fell off the cliff, and dropped into the deep miasma-filled valley. Swoosh! Jiang Yuochen displayed the heart integrated into sword and tossed the violet thunder sword down. It turned into a flying sword and hit Master Longs as he crashed toward the earth below. When the violet thunder sword flew back up, the sword edge was stained with blood. Jiang Yuochen knew very well that based on his strength, Master Longs was only injured. The strike had not been enough to kill him. He leapt off the cliff and chased into the deep valley. Since he had already wounded him, he would take the opportunity to kill him. If he could kill Master Longs, he would get 100 military merits. He would meet the third round of assessment requirements. The deep valley was permeated with black miasma. One could not see more than 30 meters into the distance. Jiang Yuochen used his sky eye, so he was not affected. This valley is Master Longs's lair. It must be equipped with arrays. I have to be careful. I can't believe such a strong superior would build a lair in this poisonous fog-filled valley. There must be some reason. Are there treasures in the valley? Master Longs was hiding. Jiang Yuochen could barely find a trace of him, even with his sky eye. He had to be careful. Suddenly, a figure moved quickly in front of him. The figure disappeared quickly. Jiang Yuochen found a deep well leading to the underground. There was an array at the entrance. Swoosh! Swinging his sword, Jiang Yuochen easily broke the array. He jumped into the well. He went down more than 20 meters before reaching the bottom of the well. The space at the bottom of the well was very wide. There were stone walls on all sides. There were iron rings and chains on the wall. It appeared to be a dungeon. One wall had a hole that was locked with an iron gate. He smashed the iron gate. The sound of women screaming suddenly echoed on the stone walls. Behind the gate he found more than 10 shabbily dressed women locked up. They were all beautiful. The youngest was only 12 or 13 years old. She looked very young. They seemed frightened and immediately curled up in the corner, staring at Jiang Yuochen in fear. In another corner were 2 naked corpses. They were covered in blood. It seemed they had not died long ago because the blood was still wet. This Master Longs is really horrible. Jiang Yuochen left immediately. Suddenly, the ground shook slightly, and a loud noise came from above. The entrance to the deep well seemed to be blocked with heavy objects. All the light disappeared, and his surroundings grew dark. Swoosh! Inscriptions emerged on the stone wall to form a black layer of array light. The stone walls of the dungeon turned to metal, morphing into iron bastions. Master Longs's voice sounded above, raspy and low. He laughed evilly. Little brat, I have already turned the stone walls of soil nature into black iron walls using the 5 elements array. Even if you have far-reaching supernatural power, you have no way to escape. Ha ha, just stay inside and wait for death. Jiang Yuochen looked very calm. He hit the wall with a hard blow. An ear-splitting metallic noise sounded. A 5-inch deep handprint appeared on the wall. What a hard metal wall. Jiang Yuochen touched the cold metal wall with a slight smile. 5 elements transform. Earth generates metal, metal generates water, water generates wood, wood generates fire, fire generates earth. A mere layer of the metal could not hold Jiang Yuochen inside. The 5 elements could generate each other, but they could also restrain each other. Among them, fire restrained gold. Although Jiang Yuochen looked very calm, the women who had been detained in the dungeon began to panic. Swoosh! Jiang Yuochen took out a light nature spiritual crystal and placed it in his hand. He injected genuine chi into it. The crystal quickly emitted a bright light, illuminating the whole dungeon. The women suddenly calmed down. They stared at him, 10 pairs of beautiful eyes. They were very curious about the handsome guy in front of them. Who was he? How could he infuriate Master Longs? In their eyes, Master Longs was a devil. He was invincible due to his powerful supernatural power. Once, he had even destroyed an entire city with his power. They had been captured and brought here as slaves. They had to make the greatest efforts to serve him because any mistake could lead to death. They were extremely afraid of him and didn't believe anyone could compete with him. Jiang Yuochen stared at them and started thinking, if he used the power of fire, the dungeon would have to be refined. He did not fear the flames with his cultivation. However, most of the women were ordinary people. If he exerted the power of fire, they would vanish in an instant. Other disciples would certainly not let a group of indigents' lives stop them. Their deaths would not affect their hearts of martial arts. However, Jiang Yuochen thought differently. If the women burned in front of him, his martial arts heart would surely be knotted. It could lead to a stagnation of cultivation in the future. Master Longs might have thought of this when he led me to the dungeon. Zhang Yuochen frowned. There must be another way. Everyone had weaknesses. Zhang Yuochen was no exception. Zhang Yuochen's martial arts were almost perfect and flawless. However, he was not cruel and merciless. Such a man would often get caught and fall into a passive position.